Who the hell would have thought that we was going to be Amazon?
We're not scared of the corporations anymore because we know that they rely on us.
They offering us a lousy contract. They don't want to give us better wages. They don't want to give us insurance. They want to take from us. Everything the company do, they want to take.
Everyone is sick and tired of working every single waking moment of their life.
77% of young adults ages 18 to 34 approve of unions.
You get a chance to sit at home and some actual thinking time, and you think, really, what is my purpose here? Am I just to be some machine for some corporation to make money off of? And I more than share my time with my family with these companies, and for what?
If I walk into a Starbucks shop in Richmond or anyplace else, and I'm looking for a job, what do I get paid? How much?
About 13 now for me.
You got 15?
13.
13. $12 an hour. Do you know that those are horrendously low wages?
Yes.
Don't question, of course you know.
And we're getting less and less pay. They don't want to give us anything. They want us to work all these years with the same nothing.
Enough is enough.
Correct.
All right, we're going to create an economy that works for working people, not just billionaires.
Workers watched on a live stream, and they saw their store become the first company-owned Starbucks to unionize in its 50-year history.
These corporations made billions of dollars off the backs of our labor in the middle of a global pandemic.
We shouldn't have had to go through all of the union busting that we've gone through in the past 4 months.
We need a fair contract. We need it now.
And let me say to Kellogg's, you don't treat people who gave their lives to your company by threatening them with permanent replacements.
There's a labor shortage. Well, really, I think it's just the lack of respect and lack of wages is really what's going on.
The cheap labor bubble is finally busting, and it's really the rebirth of the American labor movement.
Much for joining us for what is going to be, I think, a very exciting, interesting, and important discussion. We're talking about how working people all over this country are beginning to stand up and fight back. And we're talking about the role that unions are playing and will play in the future in making sure that when workers work, they earn decent wages and benefits, and they have a say in the public policies of this country. And tonight we have with us some of the very, very outstanding union leaders in this country. And you're going to hear from them in a moment. We have with us Sean O'Brien, who's the president of the Teamsters. We have Sarah Nelson, who's the international president of the Association of Flight Attendants. We have Mark Dimmenstein, who's the president of the American Postal Workers Union. We have Chris Smalls, who's the president of the Amazon Labor Union. And we have Jazz Brissac, who has been very, very active in the Starbucks union organizing efforts. Let me start off by being a little bit personal and pointing out that I learned about unions as a young person who went out, didn't have a lot of money, went out and got some jobs. And I remember one of the first jobs I had was carrying crates of soda bottles from the warehouse to the truck. That was hard work. By the end of the day, I was bouncing the bottles off my head, causing no doubt severe brain damage, but that's the way it was. And when we got paid, the paycheck was surprisingly high. And I asked, how come we're making so much money? And somebody said, well, that's a Teamsters shop. It's an organized shop. That made me feel pretty good about unions right away. And then some years later, during Christmas break from college, I would work in a postal processing plant in Brooklyn, sorting out letters and packages during Christmas. Also earned a pretty good paycheck, and that was because of the unionized postal services. So and ironically enough, we have the leaders of those two unions here today. I was not a flight attendant, Sarah, so that's that. It seems to me that unions are about a number of things. First of all, everybody should know that the average worker in a union shop makes 20% more than the same worker in a non-union shop. and the benefits, including health care and pensions, are much, much better if you are in a union. That's just the simple fact. Second of all, and we learned this, this came home to me during the last year because we have been involved in a number of strikes all over this country where large corporations are really squeezing their employees despite the fact that they're making zillions in profits. And what really struck me was the importance of worker solidarity, where workers, whether they were in West Virginia or Alabama or California, wherever they were standing together. They weren't alone. And they stood with each other, and they got the support of other unions. They got help with strike fund money. But in a world where people often feel alone and isolated, it is really important to know that you have brothers and sisters with you who are standing up fighting for economic justice. And the other area where workers, I think, where unions play an important role is workers understand that when you're in a union, you're not simply a cog in a machine. You know, this is the year 2022, and yet in many ways, business relations with workers have not really changed. One guy's the boss, one guy's the worker, and in most cases, boss says, hey, you're fired, you're fired. And what workers can do in a union is say, you know what, you can't treat me like that. We have a contract, and you got to respect that contract. If you don't, you're in violation of the law. So it gives workers some protection and knows that they're not just at the mercy of an employer who can do what he or she would like to do. And furthermore, of course, unions have played an enormously important role, and are playing today, in our political process. I think it is no secret to many of you out there that right now, perhaps more than any time in 100 years, we are seeing the incredible power that concentrated capital has over the economic and political life of this country. And, you know, as a United States Senator, I can tell you that they spend huge amounts of money. We're talking about billions of dollars over a period of years in lobbying and campaign contributions in order to make sure they get the tax breaks that they need, to get the corporate welfare that they need. And what unions do is counterbalance that to some degree in saying that, look, you know, there are millions of us and we're standing together. You got to pay attention to our needs. So unions provide some degree of political power. And obviously, I hope everybody knows that some of the most important social legislation in the history of this country did not come about by accident. Social Security did not happen by accident. Medicare, Medicaid, OSHA, worker safety legislation, and many other minimum wage legislation and many other important pieces of legislation did not happen by accident. They happened because workers stood together and the unions went to Washington or state capitals and said, you need to do this. And I think that right now, we are living in a moment where there is more income and wealth inequality today than at any time since the 1920s. We're living in a situation where the top 1% now owns more wealth than the bottom 92%. 45% of all new income goes to the top 1%. CEOs now make 350 times what their average employees earn. And, you know, just during the pandemic, while working people died having to go to work, billionaires saw their wealth increase by over $2 trillion. So the point is that right now, given the economic and political situation in this country, where the very wealthy have enormous power, it is extraordinarily important that we see the growth of unions and that we see that union power make an impact on legislation which benefits the needs of ordinary people. So we got a lot to discuss. And I think the good news is that in the last several years, we have seen a real uptick in labor organizing. We've seen all over the country workers at Starbucks organizing. We have seen workers at Amazon take on the second most wealthiest person in this country, Mr. Bezos. and former union in Staten Island. We have seen white-collar workers organize at the university and college level. We have seen doctors, residents, organize unions to get decent benefits and working conditions. So there is a lot that's going on right now, and we're going to be hearing from some of the best labor leaders in this country to talk about what's going on and where we should go from here. So let me begin by introducing Sean O'Brien. Sean is a fourth-generation Teamster and the general president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. He joined Teamsters Local 25 in Charleston, Massachusetts at the age of 18, working in the rigging industry and hauling heavy equipment in the greater Boston area. Sean, thank you so much for being with us. Well, Sean, you're on mute. There you go. Nope.
Hey, am I good?
You're good.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Senator Sanders, for inviting me and Teamsters everywhere to be a part of this discussion. It's an honor and privilege, and you're right, we do have some of the best labor leaders on this call. I also want to thank Sarah Nelson for joining us, for being a fearless partner to defend wages, rights, and workplace protections for millions of Americans. You're a true inspiration, and you're a rock star. It's an honor to be here with all the labor leaders and union members and real fighters for the working class on the call. Look, we've come together tonight to talk about workers, right? And we're living through a pretty special time right now for workers all across the country. With the rising cost of inflation, but more importantly, with more billionaires and any other time in history pocketing more and more money for themselves, we're seeing everyday working people come to terms with what's really going on in the world. The fact of the matter is this: the United States and the countries around the globe are overrun with greedy, unregulated corporations that are being led by corruptible, self-serving millionaires and billionaires who don't give a damn about working people. There's no other way to look at it. Not if you're looking at it honestly. These white-collar crime syndicates spend every waking moment trying to figure out how they can improve their bottom line and maximize profits. And for decades now, we know they go to bed every night convinced that the best way for their companies to succeed is to rip off working families. They want money. They want as much money as they can stuff into their pockets, and they don't care who they take it from. They don't care that working families go to bed hungry, or that singles mothers get evicted, or that exhausted fathers have to work 3 jobs, or that more people every day are facing the cold reality that they can never afford to retire. So we know this. We know how corruptible these billionaires are. So what are we going to do about it? Tonight's call says it all. We're fighting back. We're waking up. We're taking a stand. And we're going to keep fighting back until working people win this battle. I'm so proud to be the general president of Teamsters Union, one of the largest, most historic, hard-fighting unions in North America. We're home to 1.2 million hardworking members who knows what it means to struggle, to show up, put in the hours, stay unified, and win the day. Teamsters organize, we strategize, and we pulverize greedy corporations. We win huge organizing campaigns. We secure powerful contracts. We protect one another, and we've been doing it for 120 years, and we're going to do it for another 120 years. I'm a fourth-generation Teamster. I grew up around the dinner table learning how important unions are and how necessary unions like the Teamsters are to the health of America. I came out of the trades. To this day, when anybody asks me what I do for a living, I still proudly tell them I'm a Teamster truck driver. Right now, the Teamsters are preparing to embark on one of our biggest battles. We proudly represent more than 360,000 union members at United Postal Service. And next year, we're negotiating a new national master agreement to protect and improve the wages, benefits, and working conditions of these essential workers. This is going to be a fight for the ages. When our UPS contract expires on July 31st, 2023, the Teamsters will accept nothing less than the strongest contract ever negotiated for our members at UPS. That's an incredible undertaking. As a powerful, influential labor union, we have an enormous responsibility to leave it all on the field. We must do everything we possibly can to improve the lives of our members. That begins with a contract campaign that kicks off on August 1st, when 170 UPS Teamster locals across the country will show UPS how unified we are. And this campaign is going to continue for the next year. You will see UPS workers rise up and fight back in every state around this country for the next 365 days. That's what makes this moment we're all living through right now so special. There is a resurgence around labor right now in America, and we're all a part of it. We all have a role to play. We all need to stand up and support one another if we're going to win this fight. Teamster brothers and sisters nationwide are going to be there for one another every day of this contract campaign. We know how important this moment is. UPS may not get the same attention that Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or Sergeant Schultz of the world get, but make no mistake, this is another gigantic employer that wants to put money into its own pockets, and we're not going to let them do it. It's about our people moving forward, not about their profits. Teamster members are the lifeblood of UPS. Workers are the ones who make these corporations so successful, and workers should be the first in line to reap the rewards. Real wages haven't budged in America in decades. Every day, we see more corporations inventing new ways to misclassify workers so they can rid themselves of any responsibility to the human beings who make them successful. It's greedy tactics like these that make it so necessary to take a stand and never back down and continue to fight. In 2018, before the UPS Teamsters negotiated the last UPS national agreement, UPS made $4.9 billion in profits. Just last year, the same company made $12.8 billion. Amid all this new money, in the year 2022, UPS employees are overworked, attempt to limit benefits and pensions of paying out to new workers, demand quotas, and pressure workers into 12-hour days in the face of COVID outbreaks and extreme weather conditions. Enough is enough. We have to fight back. Workers cannot offer any concession to employers that operate this way. And we're seeing that trend more and more. We're seeing workers across America, the flight attendants, the baristas, the warehouse workers, come to terms with how badly they're being abused. The Teamsters UPS National Master Agreement is the largest private sector contract in the country, and when it's successfully negotiated, it sets the tone for workers everywhere. That reality includes our friends at Amazon. Not Jeff Bezos, not Andy Jassy. These thieves are no friend to working men and women. I'm talking about the real workers at Amazon, the warehouse workers, the drivers, the feeders, the pickers, the sorters. These people know what it means to work. They have friends in the hundreds of thousands of Teamsters at UPS who perform the exact same jobs. The only difference is UPS workers are Teamsters, and they are protected by a powerful Teamster contract. This is what we need to see happen in Amazon all across the country. Not only do we need to bring workers together and support them to successfully organize, we need to rein in Amazon's corporate greed, its rampant expansion, and we need to secure powerful contracts. The Teamsters have spent the last couple of years staying on top of Amazon's disastrous expansion, which is built on a model of destroying diverse working communities and exploiting underpaid, vulnerable workers. Recently, we spent months partnering with community groups in New Jersey and New York to stop Amazon from building a new air hub at Liberty International Airport. That campaign, which helped mobilize workers and better inform so many communities about Amazon's horrific employment and environmental impact, finally paid off. Just a few weeks ago, Amazon formally backed out of its plans in Newark because workers came together to demand Amazon commit to offering good union jobs and environmental protections. But of course, Amazon couldn't commit to those things, so they ran away. We ran them out of town. We've been doing it across the country, and we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop at all. In addition to empowering workers inside Amazon warehouses to unionize, the campaign to rise up and win big must demand that we hold these greedy corporations responsible on all levels. We have to respond to how they're abusing workers. We have to watch where they plan to grow. We have to study their investments. We have to take to the streets, and we have to take our communities back. Battles against Amazon, against UPS, against Starbucks, they're not won overnight. Any major achievement in the history of organized labor is not easily gained. It takes years, it takes decades and generations. It takes blood, it takes sweat, it takes heartbreak. But we can't give up. They want us to give up. They want us to walk away. They want us to accept the lowest possible wage and conditions. But we can't do it. We won't do it. Every day in America, we are seeing millions of people rise up and demand that the rules of this broken system be rewritten. Everyone in this call, everyone listening at home, I want you to know the Teamsters are in this fight for the long haul. We've been here fighting for American workers for 120 years, and we'll be here for 120 more. We're coming after UPS. We're coming after Amazon. We must be relentless. So the workers everywhere, go ahead, put your helmets on, buckle your chin straps. This is a full contact sport. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Sean. Our next panelist is Sarah Nelson. Sarah has served as the president of the Association of Flight Attendants, AFL-CIO, since 2014. She first became a union member in 1996 and today represents 50,000 of aviation's first responders at 20 airlines. Sarah, thanks so much for being with us.
Bernie, thank you so much. I have to thank our organizer-in-chief for bringing us all together tonight. We really have to recognize what Senator Sanders has done for this country in spreading the word to working people that we have power when we come together. And I want to thank President O'Brien, Sean, my friend, for being on this call tonight. I want to thank the Teamster members for voting for him, Chris Smalls, Jazz Brzak, Mark Dimenstein. These are leaders who represent working people in this country everywhere who want to fight. They want to fight, and they want to have people who are ready to fight and who are ready to fight for them. So in the airline industry, this has been a symbol for the American people of the growing inequality in our country. Before the pandemic, people were so angry to walk on an airplane, walk through first class. Then you go through some kind of premium economy class, and then you go to regular economy class. And then you go to some sort of basic economy class where you're supposed to be glad that you can just put your rear end in an airline seat, but you can't bring a bag with you or do anything else. And so it was a visual representation of what's happening in this country. With corporations, we don't just live in a democratic society, we live within capitalism. And capitalism has nothing to do with people. And the problem is that with the destruction of unions and the absolute assault on unions, and the degradation of the number of union members in the country, that has meant that capitalism has gone unchecked. That has meant that it's been all about profits, and they've found more ways to take those profits out of the companies, away from the workers who are creating those profits and giving it to Wall Street. And they take it away from consumers as well. We're all paying the price for the greed of capitalism. And so here we are in a place where this country across the board is favorable of unions because people are sick and tired of being walked on. They're sick and tired of having to work 1, 2, 3 jobs just to get by. They're sick and tired of not being able to get proper health care for their family members and take care of them. They're sick and tired of not being able to get an education for their kids that's equal to everyone else in the country. They're sick and tired of being told that you have to get a college education to get ahead and then be saddled with student debt that doesn't allow you to buy a house, to plan for a family, to live any kind of life. They're sick and tired of all of it. And the airline industry was a real symbol of that for people. And I have to tell you that pre-pandemic, what was happening was all of those profits in those airline companies that had been consolidated was going to Wall Street in stock buybacks. And they were, at the same time that they were making billions of dollars, they were cutting staffing. So all we did when that pandemic started and the airline industry was about to collapse was we put out some demands and we said, we're going to have a relief package that is historic, that only goes to the workers, it passes through to our paychecks, keeps us in our jobs, but puts a control on the greed for a little while. And we stopped the stock buybacks. We put a ban on stock buybacks. That ends at the end of September. And so what's happening now, what we're seeing is the greed that was pre-pandemic, the destruction of the staff, the siphoning off that money off to Wall Street. And we're about to see it get worse when those stock buybacks end. And the worst offender of this, Delta Airlines, that has made more in billions of dollars than anyone else. And they've been able to make more because they have the least number of union members on the property. So there's 22,000 Delta flight attendants who are trying to form their union right now. The ramp agents on the ground are working with the International Association of Machinists to try to form their union too. We need to support these workers in fighting for their union and helping to put a check on capital, because it's not just going to happen at the ballot box. It has to happen at the union ballot box, and it has to happen with the ability for workers to understand that those in control right now have the money and have control, but workers have the power. And when our organizer-in-chief started this call by saying that people want solidarity, and people are starting to feel solidarity and understand the power that's within that and how good it feels to have each other's backs and stand up for each other, that's where we're really going to change what this country looks like. We can change it right where that capital exists. It's not just Capitol Hill, it's capital at United Airlines, at American Airlines, at Delta Airlines, at UPS. We're going right for where they think they have all the control. We have the power. We're going to take control. And that's what this call is about. I'm so proud to stand with the people who are on this call tonight and with our organizer-in-chief, but I'm especially proud for the people that we represent out there. who are standing up and saying enough is enough. We're joining together to fight back, build our unions in the tens of millions this year, and take back our country. Thank you so much, Bernie.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, Mark Dimmenstein is the president of the American Postal Workers Union, which represents more than 200,000 employees at the U.S. Postal Service. Mark, thanks so much for being with us.
Good evening, everyone, and solidarity greetings. Thank you so much, Senator Sanders, for organizing this important discussion. And it's great to be here with the other labor leaders and our panelists. I was asked to share a little historical perspective in this conversation. Let me start with this. The pandemic has underscored that it's us, the workers, that make the world go around. And essential workers, transit, postal, meatpacking, farm workers, warehouse, delivery, education, grocery, retail, steel workers, airline workers, truck drivers, electrical workers, healthcare workers, and so many others kept the people connected, clothed, fed, housed, and cared for. When frontline workers suffered health and safety challenges, sickness, and too often death, massive unemployment, loss of healthcare, evictions, childcare challenges, the billionaire class increased their ill-gotten wealth by trillions of dollars during this pandemic. It truly is Main Street versus Wall Street and capital versus labor. But from the experience of the pandemic, workers are gaining a greater self-respect and self-worth, that we deserve much better, that enough is enough. Workers are standing up and fighting back, and we see it in rising strikes, contract struggles, organizing campaigns that have burst forth, and in many cases, workers being in advance of their own union leaders. The U.S. labor movement and its leadership today has largely failed to effectively and boldly organize the working class in battle against corporate America, corporate greed, the bosses, and Wall Street. Only 11% of the U.S. working class is organized into unions. And within that, only 6% of the private sector, down from a high of 35% in the 1950s. So organizing workers' power must be a vital goal and a vital mission. We need far bolder and militant action, and the time is now. And let me share two examples for guidance and inspiration. First, the CIO, Congress of Industrial Organization, was formed in the mid-1930s and was built in opposition to the old AFL around whether the unions were gonna put great emphasis and resources on organizing the unorganized and building workers' power. The AFL was focused on only organizing skilled workers, while the massive industries of steel, auto, electrical, rubber, and others were virtually unorganized. And with militant tactics and actions, from sit-downs and strikes, organizing workers of all nationalities and jobs, millions of workers were quickly organized into unions. There were over 1,800 strikes in 1934, including the San Francisco General Strike. The famous GM workers' Flint sit-down took place in 1936. And in just a 2-year period, the Auto Workers Union increased membership by 10-fold. The second example is more recent. From the West Virginia teachers, education workers taking on the government in illegal and successful strikes that then spread around the country. And now the wonderful breakthrough victory at Staten Island Amazon, the Starbucks workers stepping up and winning, the Amazon workers in Bessemer, Alabama standing up, the mine workers at Warrior Met standing firm in defense of their union. By the way, the benefits that postal workers have today came directly from a militant and unlawful and victorious Great Postal Strike of 1970. I have a few final thoughts on standing up and fighting back. One, unions must lead the fight in uniting all workers around common interests and against the bigotry, race hatred, immigrant bashing of the Trump-led drive towards fascist rule on full display in the January 6th hearings. Divide and conquer is the age-old tactics of the boss. For us, in our unity lies our strength. Second, workers cannot win without strong links and solidarity with our communities and our allies fighting for civil rights, racial justice, and a livable planet. This has proven crucial to our members of the American Postal Workers Union in our defense of the public postal service and the campaign that the U.S. mail is not for sale. And if we're ever going to stop this terroristic union busting that workers face at the hands of these corporations, anytime they want to step up and have a voice at work, we're going to need the community by our side. And third, we should welcome the independent bottom-up worker-to-worker initiatives of the Amazon Labor Union under the outstanding leadership of Chris Smalls and others, and the Starbucks workers under the leadership of Jazz Bresic and others, as well as, and to welcome new ideas, independent initiatives, as well as the well-established formations that already exist, as we fight to rebuild a labor movement based on militant struggle, organizing and justice, and a multi-union spirit of cooperation. I end with the inspiring words of working class poet, troubadour, Joe Hill, framed up and executed by the copper bosses in 1915. And he said this: when workers take an ocean, they can stop all speeding trains. Every ship upon the ocean, they can tie with mighty chains. Every wheel in the creation, every mine and every mill, fleets and armies of the nation will at their command stand still. It's all about power, sisters and brothers, and family. Thank you, Bernie. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mark. Chris Smalls is our next panelist. Chris is the president of the Amazon Labor Union and led the first successful organizing drive to unionize Amazon. And he did that in April of 2022, an historic victory. Chris, thanks very much for being with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Senator. And thank you, everybody on this call, labor leaders of this country, my comrades, brothers and sisters who I've had the pleasure to share many of spaces with in the last several months and weeks. And I know that we got a lot of work to do in the future, so won't be the last. We'll see each other. It's a small world when we come together, and it's powerful that we all are doing this right now in this moment in time. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for having me. To represent the Amazon Labor Union, wow. This has been historical for the labor movement overall, but it always has an expiration date when it comes to these things, right? You know, we've seen the rise of the social injustice during the pandemic, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. We've seen the rise of environmental climate issues, people on the picket lines for that. Of course, we can go on and on, abortion rights, gun laws, the list goes on and on of all these things and issues and systemic things in this country that we need to fix. But at the end of the day, when you break it all down with all these issues, behind that is people. And it's people that come from our community. And we are the ones that can make the decision if we realize our value. And being deemed as an essential worker in the middle of the pandemic, I realized my value was way more than what Amazon was offering. A life or death situation, my job description didn't say to work in the middle of a deadly pandemic. My job description said, have a high school diploma, have a GED, or lift 50 pounds. Like many people here, like many people that work in warehouses, many people that take odds and end jobs, whether they're temp jobs, whether they're baristas, whether they're part-time, full-time, our job descriptions didn't deem us as essential workers. Corporations did that. Jeff Bezos called us the closest thing to the Red Cross. How can you say that when you have workers in the building, no PPE, no facial masks, no cleaning supplies? I can tell you now, if somebody collapsed, I hardly would know what to do besides call 911. So to be deemed an essential worker, to be deemed something close to the Red Cross, and to be neglected and watch my coworkers get sick every day, to watch my colleagues test positive and be told not to tell our own coworkers in that warehouse that somebody's positive. That's just inhumane. And this is the type of situation that not only myself was in, But millions of workers still to this day are in the same predicament. So I said enough is enough. And I took further action. I led a walkout, historical walkout, March 30th, 2020. 2 hours after that walkout was terminated. A week after that, Jeff Bezos, who was the richest man in the world at the time, making $13 billion a day, $9 million an hour, almost $4,000 to $5,000 a second, had a conversation about me, somebody who's making less than $35,000. So what did that tell me? That if little old me can be on Jeff Bezos' one of 3 thoughts a day, anybody could do it. That's a good one, right, Bert? He has 3 thoughts a day. But one of the thoughts that he has to have now is that the fact that we have a union in Staten Island. On April 1st, 8,300 people who had the opportunity to vote. 55% of them said we want a union. It would have been a lot more had not Amazon played a huge part in union busting, spending $4.3 million, having myself arrested along with their own workers, 2 other organizers. That's probably Jeff Bezos telling them to stop me right now. Just tell them that I have to keep going though. But anyway, listen, this is a moment in time in history that we all, as the labor movement, we all are in this fight. The ALU broke down the barrier, and now it's time for labor and the people to storm the door. And we have to do that on the same accord. You know, we can't allow what we've seen in the last several decades to continue happening anymore. 2024 is around the corner, and I can tell you now, the sky is real gray. The waters are murky right now. What are we going to do as organized labor? I can tell you if these tragedies continue to happen, from the mass shootings to workers being fired for retaliation, we're at a point of no return. And the only thing we can do as the working class is withhold our labor. And that's the most powerful thing in the country, if not the world, is for workers to realize the power they have once they withhold their labor. And one day, I'm hoping that in this country, I can say all the unions in the country, whether it's starting with the AFL-CIO, whether it's the flight attendants, the postal workers, the Teamsters, Starbucks workers that are storming the nation, I'm hoping that one day we can all pick up the phone and say, you know what? Let's tell all of our comrades, co-workers, colleagues, family members, loved ones to not go to work until we get what we rightfully deserve. So I'm asking everybody here, this is a call to action. This is a call to action to prepare yourselves. Prepare yourselves for what we should be doing in 2024 with a possibility of a general strike. Because I know the power that I have. I know the power that I have seen when people come together. And like I said to Senator Graham, this ain't a left thing, this ain't a right thing, this is a working class thing. And we all have to realize we're all a part of that, whether you're employed or unemployed. So once again, we can't allow this window of opportunity to close. We can't allow this window of opportunity to pass, because there's a war going on outside against us, against organized labor. Billions of dollars are being used against us. So we have to match that. And we don't have to match it with money. We already proved with the ALU's campaign that we don't need money. There's no amount of money in the world that can stop the power when people come together. So as a labor movement, as a comrade, as a warrior, as a fighter, as a leader, I'm hoping that everybody hears this message tonight. And I hope that it resonates across the country, that the time is now for us to stand up and fight back. Because when we fight back, we win. Thank you all. Thank you, Bernie.
But Chris, thank you very much. Last but certainly not least is Jazz Brissack, who is a barista at the Elmwood Starbucks in Buffalo, New York, which was the first unionized Starbucks in the United States. Jazz, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's amazing to be here with all of you, including, Senator Sanders. I know you're as much of a Eugene Debs fan as I am, so that's a very special thing. And all of y'all are just, so inspirational and, really have had our backs from day one. Sarah Nelson spoke to our first organizing committee meeting back in August of last year when we were, first putting together our campaign and wondering, could we really do this? Could we really, win the first union store? And we started the campaign in Buffalo last year as part of an industry project. We'd organized a coffee shop called Spot Coffee a few years before, and those workers had overcome initially intense union busting through community pressure and solidarity, and had won a contract with $4 an hour average wage increases. And then we're asking, what next? Because you can't just have one unionized shop, especially if you want to change what it means to be in an industry that doesn't offer healthcare, that doesn't have a lot of benefits. And Starbucks, meanwhile, had been firing workers for union organizing, including one person that I'd gotten to talk to who had started to try to form an organizing committee and then had been fired for cursing. And if I know anything about Starbucks baristas, it's that no one is actually fired for cursing, because that's about the most common thing to do. So we started the campaign, and we had people across Buffalo supporting us, but we only had a few stores trying to get to that first election. And we were thinking we only have to win one. And then we have, this confrontation with Howard Schultz and a company that, claims to be a different kind of company, claims to be a social justice, progressive company, but that, was sending 150 managers into Buffalo to occupy our stores, to spy on us, to threaten us. And they, wouldn't recognize, still won't recognize, obviously, the value of what our movement has been trying to do all along. Lexi Rizzo, who is the first Starbucks worker who reached out during the Spot campaign to Richard Bensinger, my amazing organizer, mentor, who I have to mention, he's a better organizer than Joe Hill. None of this would have been possible without him. And Lexi said, we need to organize because we fight for what we love. And we love Starbucks. We want to make it the best company that it can possibly be. But it can only be the best that it can be when we have a voice and a real ability to influence it. So fast forward to December of last year when we won the first store, and immediately people across the country started organizing. Michelle in Mesa, Maggie in Knoxville, Tyler and Josie in California, so many people started, their own campaigns and have organized partner to partner and become the organizers for their regions. And in response, Starbucks has unleashed an incredible scorched earth union busting onslaught. They've escalated, unbelievable as it might seem, from sending in, what they called the Buffalo SWAT team into our city, and are now blanket threatening the entire country, from, firing the entire organizing committee in Memphis with amazing leaders like Nikki and Nebretta, who've, continued to organize and to help other partners overcome the fear that their own firings created. And now the threats are even more blanket. You complain about safety, you go on strike over a grease trap that's overflowing your store and, sending maggots into your store and smells like a dead animal, well, we're going to close your store. That's what they did to our Ithaca partners in the first city to have all of the Starbucks unionized. And they've been escalating that across the country. You talk about unionizing, then they're going to not give you the benefits that they announced in order to try to get us to vote no, that they're rolling out this next month, but that they're excluding unionizing partners from in pure retaliation. But we're going to win. Why are we going to win? Because Starbucks has all the power and all the money, and Littler Mendelson and an army of support managers that they can send in to write people up for being late on days in advance of when they were actually written up. They can, police the color of our jeans or the color of the ink in the pens that we're using to write in the records books. But we have all of you, we have the labor movement behind us, and we have all the solidarity. My favorite line of Solidarity Forever is, "In our hands is placed a power greater than their hoarded gold." And that's exactly what we have. It was a boycott that, changed Spot Coffee from a company that was firing workers for just mentioning the word union to a company that, gave our first wage proposal in negotiations and, had t-shirts talking about how, they're now committed to social justice. So I think Starbucks is capable of the same thing, but it's going to take all of us holding them accountable. We have a pledge that many of you have already signed, thank you, that's saying no contract, no coffee. We're not sure exactly what those actions are going to look like yet, but we're trying to enlist everyone's support so that we have the people when it comes time to really call the question on Starbucks. And we need to make it socially unacceptable to be a union buster. Howard Schultz and Melody Hobson are continuing to be recognized as philanthropists or donors, and they're going to the Museum of Modern Art. Thank you to our union comrades there who helped us point out the hypocrisy. And Melody Hobson is now buying the Denver Broncos and living a merry life as a union buster, and that she needs to be held accountable for that. Her life is funded by union pension funds. You can't be supported by us and be busting us. But finally, we just need to keep organizing. And this was never about just Starbucks. This is about organizing all of the unorganized workers across the country. There's no such thing as an unorganizable workplace. There's only workplaces that haven't been organized yet. And I, was drawn to the labor movement by Eugene Debs and the IWW, and their slogan in 1917 was "Get on the job and organize." And in upstate New York, we're working on, continuing our organizing program, and we're starting what we're calling the Ida Bremen Institute for Organizer Training. Ida Bremen was a 17-year-old Ukrainian Jewish immigrant to Rochester, New York. And she got a job in a sweatshop, which, was then the dominant industry in Rochester, New York, and which was considered just as unorganizable and had just as low union density as restaurants and coffee shops do now. And when they went on a general strike in 1913, a sweatshop owner fired into the crowd and murdered Ida at 17 on the night that was supposed to be her wedding party. And we're trying to carry on the legacy that she fought for and died for by continuing to organize and continuing to fight for these same rights and to change our industry just the way that she changed hers. So please get involved, get on the job and organize. And thank you for everything you're doing to support Starbucks Workers United and the labor movement.
Jazz, thank you very much for the extraordinary work you and your fellow baristas are doing. All right, we got a million questions here. We don't have time for a million questions. Let me just throw out a few. Let me start off with a very simple one. It happens to be at the top of the list. It comes from Wayne. And Wayne asks, why does our government fight so hard for billionaires at the expense of everyone else? Sarah, you want to jump in on that one?
Billionaires are simply controlling the government with their money. And that's all it is. And we have to organize to put that in check, period.
I think, thank you. And somebody who obviously works in the government, let me just concur with what Sarah just said. I think people don't know. They really don't have a clue the degree to which big money through campaign contributions, through lobbying efforts, really controls to a very significant degree what goes on every single day. The fact that in recent years we can give huge tax breaks to the wealthy, we can give corporate welfare. We can't even raise the damn minimum wage. It's now at $7.25 now. We can't pass the PRO Act. We can't join every other country on earth and guarantee health care to all people as a human right. We can't deal with 600,000 people who are homeless. We can't deal with the massive income and wealth inequality. So I think Sarah's point is right. Who else wants to jump in that one? Why does our government fight so hard for billionaires at the expense of everyone else? Mark, Chris?
Yeah, well,
ahead,
call out the people who's lobbying. That's what I want to do. Chuck Schumer's daughter, that's lobbying for Amazon. It's no secret. We got to hold these people accountable. We got to stop electing people that are taking corporation money and using it to not only keep themselves in office, but also filtering that out to union bust. It's been happening decades. We know who they are. We need to get them the hell up out of here. And if we don't get them out of here, they got to get out the way, and that's just the real reality of the situation, is that we're not holding the people accountable. There's no reason why we're saying this over and over and we're not doing anything about it.
Before I give the mic to Mark, let me go to Jazz. And Jazz, I don't want you to, you're not speaking for millions of young people, but you are a young person. What do young people feel about, how do they feel about politics today? And what do you think?
I mean, I think I can speak for most young people when I say we all love you. But I think there's
Thank you.
I think there's a lot of, a realization that this system, wasn't built to support workers, was in fact, built to support capital. And that there's no coincidence that, Howard Schultz was going to be Hillary Clinton's Secretary of Labor had she won, and Melody Hobson and Obama are guests at the same dinner parties. This is not, a place that workers are invited to. It's a place that, people who are stomping on workers' rights are thriving in. But I think, the only hope of changing that is to have a labor movement that can actually say, you have the money, but we have the people. And I think, thank you for everything you're doing to fight for that. And we're going to help you.
Mark?
Very, very quickly, let me just add that, look, working class and the trade union movement has not yet built an independent political party or parties independent of the two corporate parties that we have. And until we do that, those two corporate parties are going to run roughshod over the working people. And so that's something we have to grapple with going forward. And that's very much tied into the theme of tonight, standing up and fighting back. And so they are beholden to Wall Street, the capital, to corporate America. And that's basically what the results are going to be. Building the movement from below. Congress has never moved the people. It's always the people that have moved Congress.
That is amen to that. We've got a number of questions came in, I think, from our friends in anti-union states, often in the South. And one of the questions, many of them are the same thing, is what strategies work best to form unions in right-to-work states? So in other words, you got strong anti-union states. How do workers come together and form a union under those conditions? Thoughts, Sarah?
The truth is that workers are the same everywhere. They're not stamped with something on their head when they are living in a red state as opposed to a blue state. And union busting is the same everywhere. There's a union busting book. They all employ. They use the same verbiage everywhere. They use the same tactics everywhere, and carrot and stick. And I'll tell you something right now. There are many, many union busters watching what is happening with Howard Schultz, watching what is happening with Jeff Bezos refusing to recognize the union, firing workers. They're watching to see if we're going to hold them accountable, like Jazz said, if we're going to make it unacceptable for them to be union busters. And that's what we have to do everywhere to give workers a chance to organize. Because I can tell you right now, the desire to organize in red states or right to work states is in some cases greater than it is in places where it may seem easier to organize, or where your rights are more protected in those states. And so every single worker wants to organize. What it takes is actually trying. So Jazz talked about trying to organize her store. She did it. They talked about trying to build power in one city. And what did it do? It set off a spark all over the country. And some of those stores, many of those stores, those first stores that were organized, were in red states. It takes trying. That's what it takes. And having those one-on-ones, making those connections, and running faster than them. Chris was there every single day in and day out, and willing to get arrested and taking food to his coworkers and doing the things that the company wasn't going to do, and showing that we take care of each other. That's what it takes.
Chris, why don't you jump in and spend a minute or two, be brief, talking about how you overcame the odds, your strategy in organizing workers at Staten Island.
It's simple. As Sarah mentioned, Amazon's ran off of numbers, metrics, machinery. These warehouses, 1 million square feet, 14 NFL football fields. When you break that down, at the end of the day, even behind machinery, it's people that runs these machines. And we added a human aspect to our campaign. We added compassion. We added love, caring. Whether it was breaking bread, whether it was paying for a bill, whether it was having several conversations, being a shoulder to lean on after a rough day, something at home personally happened to you. We were there for them. We showed workers that we care for one another. That's what unions do. We treat each other like family because we see each other more than we see our own actual family. They are an extension of our family. And what I did at the bus stop, I spent over 300 days there. And that's exactly what my presence was for those people, were to have somebody there that actually showed and cared about the grievances that they were going through. Not only that showed and cared, I actually lived them. I used to take that bus. I used to commute 2.5, 3 hours each way from New Jersey. I used to work the 12-hour graveyard shift for years at Amazon. So I knew what they felt. I know how they felt. And they want somebody to be there. And we have to be there as union leaders and organizers whenever that time may be. We had people walk past us for 2 to 3 months. But it was that one day when management got on them that forced them to come sign that union card and have that conversation. So for us, like Sarah mentioned, no matter where you are in the country, you have to be there, you have to try.
Good. All right, Mark, you want to jump in on that?
I don't think I could say it any better than Sarah and Chris. So I just say amen.
All right, we got a question from Margarita. And Margarita asks, how can we combat an anti-union mindset that comes from discontent among workers?
You create your own culture in your workplace.
I'm sorry?
Create your own culture in your workplace. You're going to go, if you're organizing in the workplace, they're going to spend their millions. They're going to do what they're going to do, union bust. We know as organizers, the only way to counteract creating that, what they're going to do is create doubt. We have to show militant style of the organizers that we have power. And we created a culture that resonated with the workers. If you can do that anywhere, just like Starbucks, you can do that anywhere in your work floor, shop floor, create a culture that workers can relate to, and that will counter any type of union propaganda the company is going to throw at you, because you guys know if y'all come together, you have that power.
Do not underestimate your voice.
Right.
Do not underestimate your voice. And Bernie, what you have done has created an atmosphere where we can counter that anti-union culture, that anti-union narrative. We have people coming to us at Delta Airlines and saying, I'm signing a card because Bernie Sanders says that this is the way to change the country. And I'm a progressive and it's time for me to support the union. And so, and they're signing that card because they're saying, I see Amazon workers doing it. We can do it too. I see Starbucks workers doing it. We can do it too. I see bakery workers going on strike and taking on their company and winning, and we can do that too.
Right. I mean, one of the lessons, let me pick up on Sarah's point. It took a handful of people in Buffalo, New York, right? You won a victory there. How many shops around the country have now voted for a union?
About 211.
Started with you, right? And before that, nobody thought it was possible. And Chris, you started it in Staten Island. How many efforts are now taking place around the country in Amazon warehouses?
I'm not going to give out all of them, Bernie, but I could tell you this. There's been quite a few. Kentucky, Alabama. We have some folks in North Carolina, right to work states. Texas, I just left Texas. I just left California. It's happening. The same way Starbucks is going to roll out. Look forward to the ALU doing the same thing.
That's the point that Sarah made. Once people see other people standing up and see that it is possible to win a victory, other people say, you know what, if those guys can do it, we can do it. And that's how you build a national movement. Let me ask, let me ask you this. Interesting question. And Matt asked this question. He says, can you support unions without being in one yourself? How does somebody who's not in a union support unions?
Yes,
Mark?
go to deltaafa.org and sign up to be a supporter. We'll send you a kit when you fly in a plane. We'll give you cards to hand out to the flight attendants and stickers to wear. You can do it just by talking to your friends and neighbors.
Mark, you got some thoughts on that one?
Well, I think that community links, as I said earlier, I think is vital, especially with the incessant power and
That's
wealth
right.
of these corporations. And bringing these companies to their knees is going to take us all. So I think there's an invaluable part for community friends, community allies. What form that takes is going to be different if you're in the middle of an organizing drive, or if you're in the middle of a contract struggle, or if you're in the middle of an organizing campaign. Might be a little different with the public sector unions like we are and the private sector unions, but fundamentally, and Sean O'Brien talked about what just happened in Newark. That was a labor community effort to deal with Amazon's greed in that particular place. So I think there's a very important and a huge area of opportunity for community allies to support unions, but it comes with unions supporting our community allies and those fights as well. Because solidarity is never works. It's never real if it's a one-way street. So we have to be there in the fights for social justice, racial
Let me just
justice,
ask Jazz
women's
and
rights,
Chris.
environmental rights, and so on.
Jazz and Chris, in your efforts, my impression from what you said is the community is supportive of what you're doing. Yes, Jazz?
We couldn't have done it without the community. I mean, we had an occupation of managers coming in from everywhere out of state, and we had, all of Buffalo backing us, coming in with, bags of union pins and their union strong coffee orders to, talk union in front of the support managers and try to make us, see that this was a completely normal thing to do and, a community tradition to unionize, because Buffalo's, been a union town for generations. And that's been the same support across the country, whether or not there's, that presence that we have in Buffalo. And I mean, people have been signing our pledge to hold people accountable, to hold Starbucks accountable. And, if you're not a union member and you have a job, then, that might be an opportunity to become one to support the labor movement. And we're always looking for people to, get us involved with more organizing campaigns. So,
Chris, you had good support from the community, didn't you?
Yeah, you came to Staten Island. How many times you visited? You, Sarah, Mark, y'all have been up there. That was one of the biggest rallies in New York in years. And besides that, our community, especially the organizers and organizations we organize with, they always show up when we pick up the phone. And it's been a hot labor summer. I created this hashtag Hot Labor Summer, and it's been taking off across the labor movement. Now I can proud to say that somebody from the community that I met along the journey made a website, hotlaborsummer.com, that anybody could go to right now and get involved with any action across the nation. So that's what community does. When people say, show me what community looks like, they get involved and they help us out. They help amplify our efforts. So it's a Hot Labor Summer, and hotlaborsummer.com is a real thing. And I'm proud to say that a union member myself is the one who created that. And now it's taken across the country.
If anyone is mistreated, we're all in jeopardy of being mistreated. And I have to give a shout out to DSA that has been there for every single fight at Warrior Met in Alabama, at Amazon warehouses, at Starbucks, at the St. Vincent strikes that with the nurses in Massachusetts. They've been there every time. And it takes coming out for each other's fights to build that kind of solidarity and the kind of power that we need to build the unions that can win.
All right, let me wrap it up. We've gone on a little bit longer than we were supposed to. Let me just touch on a few of the points that the panelists made. Number one, what the moneyed interests and the establishment very deeply want us to believe is that change is impossible. Right? You're non-union, working, terrible working conditions, crappy wages, no health care. You can't change it. That's the way the world is, and it will never change. That's what they want you to believe. And we got to get out of that mindset. And we got to look back in history, and Mark touched on some of that. People who put their lives on the line sometimes died. You know, they didn't take on consultants. They took on guys with guns who were shooting them down in Colorado and elsewhere. All right. We have, as human beings, a right to live with dignity. It is not utopian. It is not radical to say that if you work at a job, you've got to be treated with respect. You deserve decent wages. You deserve decent benefits, including a good pension. The turnover rate at Amazon is beyond belief. And that is Bezos's plan. You work people, you crush them, they leave, you bring in another group of people, and you crush them as well. That is a business model created in hell, and we should not allow it to continue. And I think Jazz and others made the point that we cannot sit back and allow these distinguished leaders in our community who go out and break unions, who go out and intimidate workers who are trying to form unions. They are not distinguished. In many cases, as Sean O'Brien said earlier, they are crooks and corrupt individuals. And we got to call them out for what they are. So there's an expression, the truth shall make us free. And we got to start talking some truth. And the truth is that we cannot live in a country where so few have so much wealth and so much power, where so many people are hurting. Now, you're not going to hear this on the corporate media. Half of our people live paycheck to paycheck. In the richest country on earth, 3 people own more wealth than the bottom half of America. Anybody out there think that is morally acceptable? That makes good economic sense? Nobody thinks that. Nobody thinks that people should be dying by the thousands in this country because they can't go to a doctor because they don't have any health care. Nobody believes it. Nobody thinks it makes sense, or that it's vaguely rational that the fossil fuel industry continues to destroy the planet. All right, so we got to stand up. And when we stand up, you're going to find, as I think everybody said tonight, that ordinary people all over this country said, you're right. Thank you for standing up. You're an example to what I want to do. You're an inspiration to me. That's what we all have got to do. So I want to thank all of you and Sean, who's no longer with us, for inspiring me and so many other people. Thank you for the work you're doing. And to those of you who are watching, let's stand up. Let's fight back. Let's transform this country. We can do it, and don't let anybody tell you we can't. All right, everybody, thank you so much.
Solidarity forever, Bernie.
Solidarity forever, y'all.
Thank you.